Defensive or lose?
Not defensive will help you on this.
That might.
Hey everyone, this is Curve and I bring you another standard match. Today we have another meta deck. We have Orfist on the left, and on the right we have Claudine once again. Of course, this is the same Claudine player that I featured multiple times on the channel, who still refuses to release his deck list. But anyways, getting into the match, we do have Claudine obviously using the Zorga ride line just because it synergizes with what the deck already really wants to do anyway. So it's just insanely good for it. Drawing the 2 cards and then discarding the Flowering Buds. Going to be passing over to Orfist. Orfist is going to be drawing off of the starter and then searching out the world card. I had to think to myself why you would do that, but it is actually possible that you want to draw. You do need to draw into multiple world cards when you're playing Orfist. So if you happen to draw into one off of the starter skill, you would want to search something else. Like, you don't want to search out another copy of that, because if you end up like searching a copy of something and then drawing into another copy of it, that's kind of bad, because Orfist doesn't necessarily need a whole bunch of differently named orders, but it does benefit them a little bit more than having the exact same order, except for that grade 3 one, I guess. Anyways, riding into the Black Tears Husk Dragon here, adding back that Flowering Bloom or Flowering Buds, I always forget what it's called. Calling a Prod Pollen here, going to be calling 2 tokens, so that is looking like a very good order, especially when it's followed up by a Burrow Mushrooms, calling out 2 more tokens. So we have gotten a full board, basically just using 2 cards. And then of course we're going to follow that up with a Blessing to the Flower Buds, which is going to give a 10k across the board to every single plant token, meaning that every single attack here is hitting over a defensive. So this first Prod Pollen swing is just going to be at a 24, which is still a magic number considering that the opponent is only at grade 1. Not a lot of decks can actually get this much power on their first grade 3 on their second turn, but Claudine is definitely just one of those decks that can do it, as we swing the 25 at the Vanguard here. Kind of unfortunate here, because if you guard with a 15k, that is a 1 to pass, because even though you got that defensive, you are at 33, and if they get a trigger, that puts them up to 34. So if you, not 34, 35. So if you realistically want to guard this, you do have to overguard for like 20k. But we see a critical trigger here coming on down, pushing Orfist to 3 already, and then making this a 40k swing from this plant token column. I almost called it plant column token. Anyways, very difficult to guard. That's going to be a 20-point guard. No, that's a 25-point guard, which is kind of difficult to do here, but looks like if we want to guard it, we probably have to commit 2 triggers. There is an argument to guarding this, because you do want to be able to soak up more damage during the next turn once Claudine gets those 4 attacks, but at the same time, you're going to be giving up a lot of shield here, and I feel like next turn it'll be a little bit less shield, although I don't know. Numbers with Claudine are very good for the early game, because they're hitting like 10, 20, and then of course like 25, and even the Prod Pollen 24, which is really good against grade 1s. Not as great against grade 2s, but of course just the fact that those tokens stay at like 10k base when you're on Claudine makes it so that when you go first, you have a lot of easy pressure and just like make magic numbers. Anyways, gonna be riding into the grade 2 for Orfist. Looks like we did opt to guard with 2 triggers during that last attack. Gonna be playing the Eclipse Moonlight. Actually, that was the wrong. Yeah, that's Eclipse Moonlight. Counterblasting the 1, and I believe we drew a card, and then of course calling the Cyber Kaitut, or Cyber Kailute, or whatever it's called. Dragon Tree grade 2. Forgetting to put the Dragon Tree marker. Definitely won't forget about that later. And of course, the more important part is that you do search out the mask. Going to be swinging with the Cyber. Just going to be intercepting with the Prod Pollen. Perfectly good, because, you know, Prod Pollen has kind of served its purpose, and now it's just shield value right here. Swinging 15 at the Vanguard. Not hitting into a single trigger there. Pushing to 2. And of course, no defensive trigger on the other side. So it looks like we are finally going to be going into Claudine here, kind of deciding what we want to discard. I do see a Florence there, which I really do like Florence in Claudine. I feel like Claudine is just like a pretty fun deck. If you never tried it, I would recommend playing it. It's a fairly cheap deck. I can't really think of too much that's super expensive in the deck. I mean, like, a lot of the stuff is just commons and rares. If you're playing Habitat, that can get a little bit pricey. And if you're playing, I guess, I'm trying to think of something. Florence can be a little expensive. The Wrench can be a little expensive. But for the most part, Claudine's pretty budget. And it's definitely a lot of fun to play. You can definitely tutor the deck any way you want. There are multiple different kinds of builds. And I still have not figured out which build is the correct build. But anyways, getting back into the match, we are going to retire the entire back row to call a swarm, or to get our effect where all our tokens will get 5k, and then Claudine herself will get a drive. And then of course we are going to be binding an order from the drop zone. Going to be binding that blitz order that we discarded for ride line a little bit earlier, and then calling down another burrow mushrooms to call out and fill up the rest of the board using Claudine's skill to soul blast one. With 2 orders, I believe we actually have 3 in the drop and bind zone. That is going to give an extra 5k. As this other swing is still 23. Honestly, just like putting a token behind Claudine and getting like a 10k booster behind your Vanguard is just kind of just like insane pressure, as we're going to see a PG here, just kind of preventing any shenanigans from popping up. We do see a heal trigger here, going to be giving the power to the token that restood. And then of course we can't actually see it here, but that was a front trigger that just got triggered. And then of course the third check is going to be a blank. And now we do have really swole columns here. So this is a 30k column against this 10k Vanguard, meaning that this is going to be a very difficult attack to guard. We're going to have to guard 25 if we want to guard it. But that is just such an awkward number, especially if you're not playing draws or fronts, or I guess if you don't have one of those. But we are going to be taking that one, taking the 45, and already we are at 5 damage before we even get into the grade 3. Honestly, that's just the power of Claudine. She has just so much good early game aggro rush and mid game like hard swinging attacks that is honestly just like, if Claudine high rolls, it can literally just steamroll almost any deck in the game. I'm honestly struggling to think of a deck that can survive a high roll Claudine turn. Obviously Orfist here, being like one of the best decks of the current format, is definitely struggling to keep up with what Claudine is doing right now. It's honestly looking like at this point, if Orfist doesn't finish it here and now, things will probably be done in the next turn. But anyways, we do see the Orfist going into Orfist Mask right away, of course using the Regius to put the grade 3 order into the order zone, which is going to be pretty good. Going to be playing in the Darkness Nobody Knows, Soul Blasting one, and then retiring one of the plant tokens. Geesh, another great thing about plant tokens, I've definitely said this multiple times when talking about Gandiva, is that plant tokens are so good because they're just like a free body. They help you hit like a better number, like even 5k just like matters like most of the time. And you don't even care if they get retired by other things. Anyways, we do see another Eclipse Moonlight being played here, I believe from the hand that time. Counterblasting one and getting out the token. I believe that we did actually forget to add the 5k onto this, which is why you'll notice that some of the numbers tend to be a little bit odd once we get into the attacks. But oh, looks like we also remembered to get our Dragon Tree marker. Definitely not something you should forget if you're ever playing in a competitive tourney. But of course, this is just locals. It's not really a huge deal. But anyways, going to be swinging with, I believe we think both of these are the same number, but this first swing is of course going to be just a 25, swinging at the Vanguard. Going to be guarding that for a 15k guard. Swing for a 30, I believe we said it was also 25. We forgot about the extra 5k, so that was a little bit of a misplay, so that's why it was guarded by a 15k shield. Swinging in the Orfist, calling out the 2 Shadow Army tokens by, I think we pitched, was it? Yeah, I think you have to pitch. Oh, you get 1 for every 1 you pitch. So going to be getting a triple drive. We did also use the Orfist skill to remove the other Orfist from the drop zone, and so we have triple drive right now. So 2 decks that are playing with triple drive. We'll see which one ends up on top. We did see a critical trigger there, but another 2 blanks. No defensive triggers coming out from Claudine. We've got 2 more pretty big numbers here. We've got 35 and 40. So this first swing is going to be swing in for 35, which is a pretty awkward number because that's, once again, a 25 point guard, and 25 point guards tend to be pretty awkward to guard in general because that's like a front trigger or a cat plus 5k shield, or you want to just like overguard it because you need 2 triggers to get to 30 to exceed that. The only thing that really makes it easy is if you happen to have Evergreen, but we did actually hit into a defensive trigger there, meaning we're about 23, so this other swing for 40 is just going to be blocked by that front trigger. So now we're tied up at 5, but Claudine is starting off with a Persona Ride, meaning that Orfist is in a very, very bad situation here because you have to guard all 4 of these attacks, and all 4 of the attacks are under Persona Ride. So we do see a Shadow Cloak here dumping another order. Not sure exactly what order that is. If I had to guess, it's probably Mask of Hydra again, because this is a funny monkey donkey build right now. But Shadow Cloak is honestly another card that's pretty decent in Claudine because she really does want you to have orders in the drop zone so that you can use her skills so that you get extra power. And Shadow Cloak does honestly just accelerate that game plan. The only problem I have with it is that it kind of Claudine does tend to be like, I guess, a little stressed for space, so it can be kind of hard fitting everything in if you want to play a lot of 4-ofs. But we do see Claudine there retiring the Shadow Cloak and then 2 of the back row tokens, leaving 1 column of tokens open, probably to be our main attackers, using the Claudine skill to bind another order in order to call out the 2 plant tokens. And then, of course, we are going to put some salt in that wound by playing a Margaret from hand and using her skill to counterblast 1, stun both of the Shadow Army tokens, and also prevent them from intercepting, but that doesn't really matter. But so it looks like if Orfist wants to do any attacking, it is going to have to either move those back or just like call over them. But this first token is already swinging for 20k thanks to the Persona Ride. Without that, we would have swung at just 10, which would not have been a very good number. But at the same time, we are kind of in a pinch here, so it doesn't really matter. We have a total of 4, so when it restands, it's going to be getting another 10k, so it's going to be at 30 base with the 10k booster. That's going to be 40. Claudine herself is swinging in for 33, and the Margaret is also for a 30. So unless we have like 3 PGs and like 20k guards, we're probably not going to be able to guard this. We would need 10k here, probably a PG for the Vanguard, and another like 25k for the other column, and probably another PG for that plant token. Of course, it's not even accounting for triggers. So honestly, it looks like we probably just, in all honesty, we probably just take this one, hope for a heal, and then maybe that can allow us to actually defend against these. But we are going to take it, unfortunately not getting that heal and getting a draw instead. Anyways, that's going to be it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to do all those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.